I'm on my way to interview an owner of an interesting car. I'm on my way to see Jim and have a bit of a chat about his Toyota Celica GT4. Now, he only lives a few k's down the road, so I'll see you then. No, I'm not performing any U-turns. I'm here talking to Jim about his Toyota Celica GT4. So how long have you had this one? Well, I've had this car about 5 years. I bought it as part of my sort of downsizing for retirement. It is supposed to be my retirement car. I know that perhaps doesn't fit into the sort of category, a low turbocharged car, but I have a bit of a history of owning sort of unique cars. I know there's been a couple of blips on the radar, but I always quite like these things, and so yeah, it's not a bad thing really. Now, tell me a little bit about it. It's what, a 2-litre engine? Yeah, they're a 2-litre turbocharged east-west sort of thing, 5-speed gearbox, 4-wheel drive. They're the product of the Group A era, which is a wonderful era in motorsport as far as I'm concerned. It brought about some wonderful cars. Everything from your Ford Sierras to your Nissan Godzillas to your Toyota Celica GT4s. You know, the Lancia, all these cars that were built for rallying and racing. And I don't like front-wheel drive cars. You know, like I know I had a Cooper S Mini at one point, but I didn't want a front-wheel drive car. So that left rear-wheel drive. Well, hardly anybody makes them these days. Manufacturers have gone down this sort of blind alley with front-wheel drive cars, and so, you know, a big car like a Ford Falcon or a Commodore, that or the 4-wheel drive, you know, stuff but of course they're old, things like this, or Mitsubishi Lancer, which weren't sold in Australia until their later eras, so they were too expensive, and the Subaru WRX, which are very common, but they're also a bit more pricey. I bought this car while it was in a trough of the sort of cars go through that trough where they're in that period where nobody wants them, you know. And I bought it at that point. These days they're worth a bit more, but and they're very scarce. They did sell them in Australia, but not in big numbers. So yeah, I was lucky to get it fairly cheap. Now, what made you go, I want to buy a Toyota Celica GT4? Yeah, well, like I said, the Group A era sort of thing, but it was also a time when I was fairly active in rallying, and I watched motorsport, and I think Carlos Sainz used to rally these, and he was a charismatic sort of driver, over the top and have a go your mug type, and I don't know, I just sort of liked them. I thought they were a pretty nice thing. It was also cheap, and there wasn't a lot of other options open to me really, unless I wanted to make big compromises and get a front-wheel drive car or something, which I don't think I'd ever do. And so yeah, it ended up with the Celica. Do you have any motorsport plans for it? No. I have a hard and fast rule in my life. A road car is a road car, a motorsport car is a motorsport car. There was a time when I was young and only owned one car, and then it was used for both things, but since I can afford to own a motorsport car and a road car, I don't have any plans at all to use it in any form of motorsport. I've broken that rule a couple of times over the years. I ran a road Mini and in a couple of motor cars once or twice and that, but for the most part, no, it's a road car. Now look, life would be so much simpler if I did do that. I've got a bucket list of events that I want to do, and like for one of those is to drive around Phillip Island Raceway down in Victoria. Now, I no longer drive at 10 tenths, and you've only got to look at old in-car video of me sort of driving around racetracks, and you can see how on the edge I used to be, and these days, I change gear a lot sooner than that, brake a lot earlier, and there's not a lot happening. So yeah, for me to go down to Victoria in this car, I'd have to put a fire extinguisher in it and take my helmet. I think that's about it. There might be a couple other minor things, I don't know, but not much. But to run the old dolly in a Super Sprint, suddenly I'm faced with all sorts of rules and regulations that are, because it's a dedicated sort of log-booked rally car, you've got to comply with more rules than you do if you're going to go in with a road car. I understand the rule maker's thinking behind that, the assumption being that if you've got a fully prepared car, you're going to be going hard and trying hard and going a lot faster. Of course, in the case of the old dolly, it's a heavy rally car on rally tyres. It's going to be slower than a standard Dolomite around there. So because it's a rally car, I have to have the hands device, the gadget that goes over your shoulders to stop the whiplash, and that requires another helmet. So I've got to spend a lot of money in order to run the dolly, and I could run this without that sort of hassle, but of course I don't want to run this. Okay, this is a fancy thing and that, but it hasn't got the mystique and the sort of same, I don't know, as running the dolly. The dolly's the harnesses and the full seats, and you feel like and I can't really put it into words that much, but no, it won't be used in any form of motorsport. Do you look upon this car as a bit of an investment? No, I do not think any car is an investment. I've already spent a fortune on this thing. When I first got it, it was cheap, and it was also not in the best of nick. It was not too bad in its sort of main bits, but the springs had been cut to lower it, and the shocks were buggered, and the bushes were buggered. I did those myself, which is I didn't really plan to work on this, but I did that, made it drivable and usable. The gearbox was pretty dodgy. The aircon didn't work. So I did spend money and have those things fixed, which did run into a fair bit of money. It's now in pretty good nick. The motor's got some Ks on it, so I don't know how long that'll go, but at the moment it seems fine. Now, Toyotas are known for being very reliable. How's this car been? It's sort of been pretty reliable. 5 years. Look, it has broken down twice. The same problem, I suspect, and I really can't say I found the problem. The first 6 months of owning it, it wouldn't start at one point, and then the next day it did start. And then just recently I broke down up in Newcastle, and then it just stopped as I was driving along. NRMA come along, and he didn't virtually do anything. Pushed and poked around on a few wires, and then it started. I've come to the conclusion it's a loose connection on the coil. I put a cable tie on that, and it's now running again. So, it has been pretty reliable. It's a Toyota. How do you go getting parts for this? Well, this is only the second non-British car I've ever owned, and the first Japanese car I've ever owned. And I said I didn't do the research on the parts supply. And parts for this, anything that's part of the four-wheel drive part of it, if it's a part that relates to the front-wheel drive Celicas, You know, you go to Wreckers and get parts. But if it's a part that is specific to the four-wheel drive version, it seems to be you can't get them. It took me ages to find rear shock absorbers. Had to, you know, they're a brand I've never heard of, came out of Germany and cost a fortune. And when the gearbox was getting rebuilt, yeah, there was just no parts, no synchros, no parts. And so I ended up having to buy another second-hand gearbox that came out of Japan, those sort of wrecked ones they sell out of Japan. And the mechanic guy had to make one gearbox out of the two. So ironically, for the old Triumphs, you know, the old 2500 Triumph, made in the 60s, for goodness sake, I can get just about anything for it just on the internet, and it arrives in a week and a day, pre-bias. And so, you know, it's quite, but yeah, I think Japanese cars are apparently known for parts problems. So yeah, parts aren't the easiest thing to get, and maybe it wasn't the right choice for on into retirement sort of a car, but you know, it's done now. Now I notice on all your cars what I think is a Latin phrase across the windscreen, Veni Vidi Vici. What does that mean? Yeah, look, it's Latin. It means I came, I saw, I conquered. It's supposedly a quote from Julius Caesar, who went off and conquered Egypt and came back and said Veni Vidi Vici on his return. Now I don't know if that's a historical thing or whether it's a Shakespeare thing. You know, so I don't know how true it is, but nevertheless it's a nice quote. It's been on every car I've ever owned, bar I think my first car. Sometimes it's blazed across the windscreen, other times it's written sedately sort of thing somewhere. So you'll see it on all the cars. Now what's the future for this car? Well, hopefully this car will take me into retirement. Yeah, well, I'm retired now, but hopefully it'll see me out basically. It is hard to get in and out of, and I can see maybe in time that might become an issue. But I certainly don't have any plans to buy anything else, or won't have the money anyway. So if it has some sort of major catastrophe go wrong with it, and not so much now, but in some years to come when I've got no money, it's you know, might come to an end at that point, and one of the old Triumphs will take over the mantle of getting me around. Otherwise, I'm hopeful of having it until the end, and never know, maybe then it will be worth enough to cover the funeral. Well, thanks for that little chat about this wonderful Toyota Celica GT4. I'm Quack McMullard. Bye for now.